And Viva Fry will stop by in a few minutes. He's going to give us an update, amongst other things, about what's going on in Canada and some of his thoughts about tariffs. In the meantime, we'll be speaking with Shawn Farash. He is known as Captain Deplorable. He's a host of Ungoverned on LFA TV, streamed on Rumble. And he's a Trump impersonator. And he was swatted in March during a wave of these incidents when these are potentially, literally they're attempted murder in a strange way. I want to get more into the detail of what makes people think that this is okay, that we live in a world when this is possible. Shawn can be followed on X, Shawn, SHAWN _FARASH. And we can find him on FarashMedia.com. Be right back with Shawn after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. More to say. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent the journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency, the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to Fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/Fatty15.
As I said, you can find Shawn on Rumble. You can also follow him on X. It is Shawn _Farash, Farash. And FarashMedia.com. Viva Fry will be here a little bit later. But I want to get into a bunch of stuff with Shawn. Let's start with the swatting. Shawn, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
What happened?
So it was about tomorrow. It'll be March 13th. I was sleeping. My wife and I had just pulled up a bunch of fence posts out of the yard. We just moved into the house about a month and a half ago, and I'd heard about the incidents that were happening to other conservatives around the country. Specifically, saw people posting about it on X. I even, in media, politicians have had it happen to them, and we've heard stories about, in the gaming community. This has happened to several people in the gaming community too. I don't do that. I don't even have a game console that'll connect to the internet. But I knew it was going on when she, woke me up and I sat up. But she didn't know what that meant. I said, we just got to sit down and wait for instructions. It was terrifying in a way because, when I practice gun safety. I like firing guns. I'm a big Second Amendment enthusiast, right? You don't point the barrel of a gun at something you don't intend to shoot. So I knew that if I'd given them a reason to pull the trigger, it very well may be pulled. So we sat, we stayed calm. I received a call from the sheriff's department, and they told me that they got a bizarre 911 call at my address. They said that I had murdered both of my parents. and that I was prepared to commit suicide by cop. And I told them on the phone, I said, look, that's not true. And I'm willing to demonstrate whatever I have to do to show you that that's not the case. So you tell me what you want us to do, and we'll do it and get this resolved, and then talk about next steps. And that's how it went. We came out of the house with our hands up. The guns were drawn at us, and they weren't. And by the way, the police who were involved with this were very professional. Absolutely. They were deliberate. They were clear. They were calm. That's what you need in a situation like that. If you have jumpy people, both, the people in the home who are dealing with it and the people outside of the home who want to go home that night, you get a totally different situation. But they were very calm. We sat down and explained what I had heard. One of the officers had said to me, is this something that's going to be on the news? And I laughed. I said, no, it's going to be on social media, but you'll never see this on the news or much of the mainstream media. They thought that was unfortunate. And they were all upset that their resources and their time were being wasted on what was clearly a false call. I told the officers that were going into the house, I said, the scariest thing you're going to see in there is a cat who might hiss at you. Just don't shoot her. That's it, and then we figured it out from there. It was wild, though.
I just wonder what the police are thinking. Can they do anything to mitigate this stuff? Or they just, it's almost like they just have to follow through because of the seriousness of the allegations.
Right. What was explained to me was that they had to show up. They couldn't get a call like that and not show up. And so they showed up, and they showed up in full force. And the scariest thing, not just that us, we sit there, and every time there's flashing lights outside the house, we're like, uh-oh, is it happening again? But this neighborhood that we moved into a month and a half before this happened is pretty quiet. It's a neighborhood in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, south of the main city. It's a Republican county, a red county. That doesn't really matter. The politics of it is it's very quiet out here. There's something like this has never happened. There's never been a police presence like that in this neighborhood. The former owner of the home was, from what we were told from everybody on the block, a very nice woman. Never had a problem like this. Nobody on the block has ever had a problem like this. And so, take our side of this out of the equation for a minute. There are people who couldn't come home while this was going on. The block was shut down. And just recently, one of the neighbor's son, who's a riot, he was running around. He had like an Amazon box on. Amazing kid, really funny. But we asked him, I said, what were you thinking when that was going on? I wanted to hear what he said. And this is what really makes me upset. He said to us that he was hiding under his desk about to cry because he didn't know what was going on. I don't care. You want to come after me? I mean, I prefer you don't. But my goodness, this kid who is full of life. I mean, just a bundle of energy, a really nice boy. Just, I couldn't imagine the kid that I saw running around, with a box on, having a blast, cowering in fear because some lunatic decided, let's play a practical joke, or if they think it's a joke, it's not. Let's call a SWAT team to Sean's house because we don't like what he says on the internet. We don't like who he voted for. So it's more than just the people who are being swatted. The surrounding area, too, is still feeling the impacts from it over almost a month later.
The kid doing his best Osimo impersonation. Speaking of impersonations, do you know that reference, Sean? Or do you not watch enough South Park for me to be able to do that? Look up Osimo, everybody. You'll see what I'm talking. But to the point of impersonations, it's interesting to me, and I wonder what you make of this. Whenever there was any ink on the episode, like I'm seeing a headline, "Top Trump Impersonator, Shawn Farash." I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Farash? Am I getting the last name correctly?
It's Farash, and the thing is, it's funny. It looks like Farash. It probably was pronounced that way at some point. I've been called worse, so I usually just let it slide, But
no, it's okay.
Farash,
I want to get it right. Farash.
Oh, thank you.
Farash.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But that they hang it on the Trump impersonating. Here's the headline up on the screen right now. Is that what you think motivated these assholes to call this in, or was there something else that you were saying online or as part of your program that got to them, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not so sure it's the impersonation of Donald Trump that got them upset. That's what, essentially brought a lot of eyeballs to my pages a few years ago. But I've been able to branch it out beyond that. I think it's overall, because there are other people who impersonate Trump who don't get swatted, right? I mean, Shane Gillis does a great job. He doesn't get swatted, right? I haven't heard him get swatted. He's got a much bigger platform than I do. I happen to do it better than he does, but that's okay. He's a good guy. I would love to go and do a Trump off with. It'd be fun. I think Shane is wildly.
Get you guys on Kill Tony together.
Yeah, that's right. I think he's wildly hilarious, by the way. But I think it was more than just impersonating Trump. I think the reason why that was used in a lot of the headlines is that's how a lot of people know me. That's how a lot of people will associate my name to what I do and where to find me and whatnot. But I think it's far beyond that. I think it's far beyond that. I think it's more about being active and encouraging people to join the movement, to join up with, MAGA, so to speak, to participate in elections, to push back against some of this left-wing insanity that we see out there, whether it's men and women's sports or all sorts of crazy, the border, any of that, or just support her and being vocal about it. I used to live in New York. So, having a Trump bumper sticker on my truck was basically, a license to have something thrown at it at any point in time. I was on Long Island. It's a more, Republican area of New York than New York City. But there's crazy people. You have to be crazy to live on Long Island with the traffic. So there's a lot of crazy people that are over there. I don't think it was just the impersonating bit that got them to do this. I think it was that, I talked about it earlier in the day. I have a platform on X. I use it a lot, a pretty good presence there. And I think they saw, that my wife and I online talk about, we just bought a house, this, that. Easy to find with public tax records, and they did what they did, and I hope they get caught.
I can tell you that people love, I'm looking at the chat here, like, make him do his Trump voice. Did he talk to the cops in his Trump voice? They seem to love your impersonation, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I didn't talk to them like Trump, but for the people in the chat, you're all beautiful people, I have to say that. A lot of beautiful people. Tremendous people, really, when you look at it. And Dr. Drew is a great doctor, by the way. We love him a lot more than Anthony Fauci, right? Bad guy. Dr. Drew's a great guy and a handsome guy, believe me.
I think you would kill Shane. I think you would knock him out of the first position on Kill Tony. But I want to dovetail a couple of thoughts I have as it pertains to the swatting. And I'm super moderate, so I'm just trying to look at all sides of these things. But one of the things that I've noticed is that people leaning left seem to be apoplectic about Putin. And when you ask them, what is it? I mean, now we have the New York Times on the record saying, I think it was New York Times today, saying that indeed NATO did provoke this thing. Ukraine wasn't, isn't such a great place, and neither is their leader. The leader is Zelensky, and really calling into question the narratives that have been forced down everybody's throat. Thank you, New York Times, for doing your job for the first time in 7 or 8 years, but a different issue. But then you go, if you say to them, well, he was provoked. Let's say you get them, New York Times says he was provoked. Do you agree with that? Okay, let's say he was provoked. Then they would say, but he kills his enemies. He does away with his enemies. Anybody that stands up to him is disappeared. And I started thinking, how is that different than lawfare and cancel culture and swatting? It's the same freaking thing. It's just without a bullet, but it's the same thing. It's putting your opponents away in some violent manner. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I'm so happy you brought that up, because this has been a revelation, something that I've been thinking about, kind of just reflecting on for a while. I've never been a fan of cancel culture. Even folks on the left, on the right, in the middle. If I disagree with you, it doesn't mean I want you taken off the internet. If you're somebody who's making a living commenting on things, and I may passionately disagree with that person, as long as you're not inciting violence, I don't really have a problem with you per se. I disagree with your opinion. That's what this country is supposed to be, founded on. We could agree to disagree. We can hash it out in debate. And this is why I can't stand cancel culture. I see a lot of people calling for this person to be banned, that person to be banned, this one to be deplatformed, this one to be demonetized. And I'm like, I'm not so sure that's the right way to go, because that's not going to solve all your problems. And that's the point, right? When you have cancel culture, when it first broke out into the scene, the idea was, well, we will deplatform, demonetize, we'll ban, we'll censor, and that'll be the end of it. But that wasn't the end of it. I love Star Wars. It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi says, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. And a lot of times the people who were banned came back with a vengeance. They now have a chip on their shoulder. They're now more powerful than if they would have just been left alone and challenged on their ideas all alone, right? So I never want to be the reason why somebody is deplatformed and then comes back in the future and is, supremely powerful and just levels me. That's number one. But number two, it's all fruit of the poisonous tree of cancel culture, in my opinion. So canceling somebody wasn't enough. Deplatforming somebody wasn't enough. Lawfare wasn't enough. Censorship, shadow bans, etc. That's not enough. So what next? Because their problem isn't solved, and their problem ultimately lies in they don't like whomever the subject is, whether it's Donald Trump. Take Donald Trump for an example. They did the Lawfare 2020. A lot of people didn't like what happened in that election. A lot of questions about that. You had state attorneys general, district attorneys throwing ridiculous cases at him. You had the case in Manhattan with E. Jean Carroll. I mean, they specifically changed the statute of limitations so that she could bring the case. Letitia James, fraud with no victims. You've had case after case after case taken down off social media, demonetized. Banks are going after his supporters. January 6th, the intimidation tactics and all that. And yet Donald Trump still won the primary, himself to be the next president of the United States, and then someone took a shot at him, and then another guy hid in the bushes and was going to take another shot at him. So it's one of these things where when the cancellation of somebody ultimately isn't enough, and the idea of it not being enough, that's baked in. It's not just about we want them canceled. It's that you just said it. They want the person gone. They want them out of the picture, and the only way to get them totally out of the picture is not to erase them from the internet. It's to kill them. I hate to be morbid, but that's where it's gone. And so, maybe 10 years ago, somebody comes out there and sees what I'm saying on the internet and says, we don't like what he says. Let's try and get him banned. Now it's, we don't like what he says. Let's send cops with huge guns to his house so that any wrong move that happens could be the end. And that's the worst part. I mean, yes. I would never do that to somebody who I just disagree with.
Yeah, and it's really at the core of this dividing in the world into good people and bad people. Somehow, as you said, it's just differing opinions, but one side sees the opposite of their opinion as a bad person. You've got to be evil. There's something wrong with you. You're a Nazi. Here we go. And what's wrong with killing a Nazi? What's wrong with killing Hitler? It's a delusion. I think this whole thing is delusionality. I really do. I think there's been, before Matthias Desmet coined the term mass formation, I think we have been in a delusional state for the last 8 or 10 years. And when people wake up from this, they should be deeply ashamed of exactly what you're about. And by the way, and I saw Dave Rubin on an Instagram post today talking about the cancellation and when he was canceled. And he said something I've been saying for a long time. I knew there's so much narcissism in our culture that there would be eventually scapegoating. And scapegoating is the way narcissists manage their aggression so they don't tear each other apart. And I kept saying they're going to bring out the guillotines. And Dave Rubin said it today. He said, cancellation is the modern beheading. And I thought, yeah, that is it. It's the guillotine. They've been out. But the last point on this topic for me is, where the hell did even the term deplatforming come from? What does that mean? I mean, I can't talk to somebody in a public, I mean, if let's say I talk to somebody on a radio talk show, I can't talk to them if you don't agree with them? Think about how insane that is.
It's crazy. And I mean, the best thing I used to always love, so let's take it back. I used to be a sports radio, I loved it. Lived growing up in New York. It's what I wanted to do originally. And then I got really into politics. I realized that, since I'm a New York Jets fan, every time they lose, I'm upset, but it doesn't really impact how much eggs cost, right? So I go, all right, why don't we focus on the things that actually, because if New York Jets losing increased the cost of living, then I would have no money because I'm a Jets fan. They don't win ever. But, you have a radio show like Mike and the Mad Dog back, and those two used to butt heads all the time, and that was the best part.
Yep.
Somebody was right. Somebody was wrong. They were both yelling and screaming at each other, and you got to hear both sides give their opinion. Now it's like echo chamber. If you have this person on, you are bad, right? And, one of my favorite commentators, Dan Bongino, he said, that there's two ways of thinking, right? And generally, and not everybody, because trust me, there are people, on my side, and I call them out all the time. I go, wow, okay, so I disagree with what President Trump said. It doesn't mean I'm turning my back on him. That just means I don't agree with him endorsing a guy that I don't like. That's all. But generally, the way it is over on the right is, I look at somebody on the left with a really bad idea, really bad philosophy, something I really disagree on. I don't automatically think that's a bad person. I say that's a person. They have a bad idea. Somebody on the left generally will look at me who says, oh, I like Donald Trump, or I want lower taxes, or I want to lower inflation, or we want to, let's abolish the IRS, or let's have, let's do immigration, strengthen the border. They will look at me and go, that's a bad idea because it came out of a bad person's mouth, right? So I'm not just a person with a bad idea in their eyes. I'm a bad person with an idea, and therefore my idea is bad. And so they wage war on it.
Right.
They really do. They come at you hard.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I one of the things I was thinking about people that are on the right is they're still painted with the brush of a Republican Party of long ago. My wife and I were watching this movie a couple nights ago. It was from 1967, and they were making fun of and showing footage in the movie of old white men with the skinny tie and the horn rimmed glasses at these sort of Rotary Club meetings and stuff. And I looked at these guys, and they were espousing all this ultra conservative stuff, things you've not heard in 30, 40 years, like crazy stuff. And I just sort of recoiled, like, oh yeah, I remember those guys. Oh, that's why I was rebelling when I was 17. That was no good. But I feel like people like my friend Bill Maher still paint you with the brush of those guys for siding with the right. You know what I mean? It's almost like there needs to be some sort of PR around is sort of developing what the modern position is for a young person like you, which literally has nothing to do with those guys from 1959.
No, it's funny because when you talk about the guys from 1959, or even like these days, right? The folks that are in the Senate, the Chuck Grassleys, right? Who have just been there for too long. I'm sorry, nothing against older people. Yes. But like Mitch McConnell. Yeah. Okay. Mitch McConnell can't stand up. No offense to anybody with a disability. That's not what I'm trying to do. But if a guy who can't walk himself into the chamber has his health has degraded to this, condition, how on earth are we tasking somebody like that with the job and the duty and the responsibility of determining the future of our country when he doesn't know, the future of, what's going to happen after he takes a step too far down the stairs? That's the problem. I'm not, people talk about Republicans as the party of old white males, this, that, and the other. And it used to look like that. But after 24, you have started to see where the real diversity is. The big tent has become the maybe not Republican Party proper, right, in terms of the RNC, but GOP voters, people who are open to more ideas and including more people. Like real inclusion is happening with people that I call my friends. I know folks who are African American who have shown up to left-wing rallies in their MAGA hat and have been ripped to shreds and called every racial slur in the book. I used to organize protests on Long Island. When there would be a counter protester coming in, I would tell all our people, hey, leave him alone. First Amendment right. He's standing there with a sign. Who cares? It's not about him. Go enjoy the day, right? Let's have a good time, And even then, I would get into it with a couple of them, and I would talk to a couple of counter. It was never like racial slurs coming out of my mouth. There'd be a few 4-letter words. Not many of them were love, but it wasn't. It was in the heat of the moment type of deal. Everybody has their, little slip up here or there. But some of the things that they would say to friends of mine who are minorities, they'd be considered, are just horrible, to the point where, like, if Trump said something like that, it'd be wall to wall. Every publication, every, mainstream media broadcast at 6:00 on the news would be Donald Trump used this racial slur. And it's just like, it's wild to see it. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it. I mean, Jasmine Crockett, who's like the de facto face of the Democrat Party now, just made an example. She thought she was making like a point. I've been saying it for the last couple of months. I was like, you hear about all these illegals that are in the country, want to, send them back out of the country because there's laws, you didn't follow them. And it's like, okay, the excuse has been, oh, if we deport the illegals, who's going to pick our food? And I'm like, that's really no different than like 1860s. If we free the slaves, who's going to pick the cotton? And she just said that. She was like, no, we're not going to pick the cotton. We're not going on those farms. And I'm like, holy moly. Like, you're literally, the mask is off. Like Scooby-Doo, you don't even have to pull it. She pulled it off and was like, it's me. Crazy.
Not only that, you're not in California. My understanding here in California, which where the majority of the immigrants do the farming, this is here in California, there's actually an exchange program with Mexico where they are legally brought up here as non-citizens to work and then go home. That is up 85% of the farming here in California. Somebody fact check me on that. That's my understanding. So this whole notion of you're not going to get the farming done is completely false narrative. It's fake news, is all I can tell. Susan, do you have your headphones on? Good. I wonder if you do a little improv with me. She didn't hear your previous Trump, and I'd like you, Mr. Trump, to defend your freeze on tariffs today. What was your thinking there? Why did we go so hard and only to freeze the tariffs today?
Well, I have to say this, right? Because you look at the tariffs and we're leveling the playing field. We're leveling the playing field like Chris Christie levels a beach chair. He sits down, it's gone, and he has a lot of problems. He's got a big problem. And, Lizzo lost a lot of weight, but the weight that she lost, he found, apparently. But you look at it, and we still have tariffs on Ireland, by the way, because if you didn't hear about it about a month ago, Rosie O'Donnell moved to Ireland. I called Ireland. I said, if you send her back 4,000% tariffs, so we're not going to let it happen. But you look at it, you look at what is going on. We have a problem with China. I spoke to President Xi of China, who looks a lot like Winnie the Pooh. And I said to him, Winnie, we're going to slap a tariff on every single wonton and egg roll and chopstick that comes into our country. We're not going to let it happen. It's not going to happen for free. And we're even going to slap a tariff on, remember Fang Fang? That was Eric Swalwell's girlfriend, right? The Chinese spy, the spy who loved me. We slapped a tariff on her, too. I call her Chinese takeout. And Eric Swalwell is very unhappy. He said, now I can't afford Fang Fang. It's horrible. But we paused the tariffs on the good people.
I don't get swatted, Mr. Trump. Go slow. Go easy here, my friend. What's that, Susan? Go ahead.
So good.
Yeah, it's really good. I know. That's why I wanted you to hear it.
Oh, my goodness. This is why you were swatted.
That's what the headlines say.
Part
He
of the
had some
reason.
other strong opinions, too.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I got into the weave. When I do Trump, he does that whole thing where he goes out, way out.
I know. He goes
talk about tariffs. I'm talking about wontons, right?
Yeah.
Then he comes back, right? So,
Fang. But to that point about tariffs, I wonder if you had an opinion about this. I'm going to ask Viva the same question, which is I saw the Treasury Secretary today talking about the harsh tariff levy to begin with. And I see these things fleetingly online, and they stay with me, and I hope I'm getting them right. This is, why am I blanking on the Treasury Secretary's name?
Is it Scott?
I want to say Desmond, but it's Scott. Yeah, Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent. He was saying that this was really always all about China, and it was a giant trap that China walked right into. And now Trump has them where he wants them. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's the fact of matter. There still is a 10% tariff going everywhere that people negotiate one direction or the other. But do you think that this was ultimately all about China? And was it a trap?
I don't know if it was all about China the whole time. I think it may have been I think China was the big fish and the little fish was fair trade deals, with all these other countries. Because, we were in an integrated position. There were tariffs on us from these 75 plus other countries that once the United States decided to say, hey, we're going to assert ourselves here, we're going to throw our weight around. You want access to our market. You're getting access to our market for free. We can't have that. I think China was always the big fish. And once China started to retaliate and Donald Trump decided he was going to ratchet it up, and they retaliated again, and then he ratcheted it up again. And then you have TikTok, obviously there's a deal that's on pause now because, right, hey, we're not gonna give you this win while you're treating us like this. I think this was a great time, to pull the trigger on a 90-day pause and essentially align the rest of the world against China, because our biggest problem is the trade issues that we have and the jobs that are being shipped out to China, right? I think it's very hypocritical for people to criticize, you have Bernie Sanders, $15 an hour minimum wage. He wants to treat the workers fairly. But every time, Donald Trump talks about ratcheting up tariffs with China, he's got a problem with it because, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Meanwhile, the shoes that he wears are probably put together by a Vietnamese or a Chinese toddler, right? So it's unfortunate that this type of double standard exists. China exports to us 5 times more than we export to them. So the tariffs that we're putting on China are going to impact them a lot more than they're going to impact us. I happen to think that Scott Bessent is, I think he is brilliant. I think he is probably right now to this date, my favorite Trump cabinet pick because of how he has been and just how strong his messaging, how sharp he is. And I think that, look, the 10% reciprocal that's going on during this 90-day pause, you still raise a little bit of revenue off of it. But I do think the ultimate big fish the whole time was China. The little fish was fair trade deals with a number of countries where looks like we're going to get those. So I think it's a win-win for the administration. And I see a lot of people on the left kind of scrambling to say, well, he caved. Well, didn't you want him? You were just 5 minutes ago when the stock market was having a problem. We're like, he needs to stop. Then he stopped. He caved. So again, he can't win. I think it was a brilliantly played move. And I do think there was a certain level of, you want to call it chess, deception, pre-planning. I think there was a level of that took place here, considering the players involved.
Drew.
I listened to a lot of, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was the most unexpected headline that popped up on my phone probably about 15 minutes ago. And it was from CNN. And the headline says, U.S. markets have the best day in more than 16 years after Trump pauses most new tariffs. The best one since, 2008?
I watched it, and it went wild in about 90 seconds when it turned around. It went completely berserko. And people kind of knew that would happen once he would. That's why they were asking for the pause. I didn't realize now they're saying he caved. I think it's ultimate. It keeps everybody, because you're showing yourself your own stupidity when you talk out of both sides of your mouth like that. It's interesting. I was listening to a French commentator, and he said it's the art of the deal on a global scale. I thought, ooh, that's kind of what this is. He's predictable in unpredictable ways.
If I can throw in one more thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was saying. It's like Nolan Ryan is one of my favorite baseball pitchers. He was predictably unpredictable. You didn't want to crowd the plate because he throws 100 miles an hour, but he couldn't locate it. So you had to be real careful.
Interesting. Caleb, what's that?
So it was just a couple hours before the announcement came out about the tariffs being changed. Trump actually posted on Truth Social saying that right now this is a great time to buy with 3 exclamation points. And they said that the people that jumped when they saw that post. That's
almost legal. So
right, exactly. They said people made a lot of gains if they jumped on that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's kind of odd. But okay. Listen, Sean, I appreciate you joining us. I'd love to talk to you some more as we go along here. By the way, who is Captain Deplorable? Is that just a nickname, or is there a character there?
That was the name that I used on, believe it or not, TikTok when I first started going viral for the Trump stuff. That was my username. So that's where that came from.
I see. Excellent. Well, Captain Deplorable, Shawn Farash, whoever you go by, we appreciate you being here. Keep up the good work, and we hope to see you again very soon.
And thanks very much. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Sean. You can follow him on X, Shawn, SHAWN_FARASH. And it's also farashmedia.com. And you can follow him on Rumble like the rest of us. David Freiheit, also known as Viva Fry, is going to be here in a few minutes. Of course, Viva is on Rumble and Locals and YouTube at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Viva and Barnes live at vivaandbarnes.locals.com. Follow Viva on X at the Viva Fry, F-R-E-I, and vivafry.com. We're going to take a little break and be right back with Viva Fry.
Wellness company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and being rationally ready, and who knows what the future will hold for us. Now TWC has a service to cover your family's medical needs, including and especially prevention. For just $100 a month, the One Wellness Elite membership includes 2 free medical-grade nutraceuticals per month, free prescriptions for over 800 of the most common medications, access to concierge telemedicine, available at a moment's notice, and a 15% discount on all supplements and the emergency kits. 15% off the emergency kits. That's quite a saving. So if you're spending $100 or more on supplements and meds every month, this plan will already save you money. If you sign up for a year, you'll save $200. And when you use the link, drdrew.com/TWC, you'll get 10% off the first payment to the One Wellness Elite membership. Check out One Wellness at drdrew.com/TWC and get 10% off your first payment. drdrew.com/TWC. It's all there.
It wasn't all Dr. Drew or anything.
Why would I screw myself? What am I, Dr. Drew?
Reminder on TWC, some of these tariffs are going to affect medication prices, and until things are brought stateside and transferred over to India, where we can negotiate better rates, it is in your best interest to have the medications on hand. I am relieved that I have the TWC emergency kits available. And we are changing topics for a few minutes here, obviously during our breaks. And our sponsors are always aligned with our longevity, health, and wellness missions. Active Skin Repair, newest product partner, is offering 20% off to our audience. The hydrogel spray, which comes in 3 strengths, baby, kids, and adults. You can harness the power of the body's own immune system for rashes, cuts, grapes. There is our granddaughter who uses it regularly for diaper rash, and she used it for baby acne too. Very effective. That key ingredient is hypochlorous acid, clinically proven antimicrobial molecule. It's been used in hospital for quite some time. And I use their hyaluronic acid moisturizer. Oh, there's Caleb's young baby who had a scrape, and it healed quickly with hydrochlorous acid. And as I said, the emollient, the hyaluronic acid serum is just excellent. I've tried just about every emollient out there, and they all irritate my skin. But the hyaluronic acid, which is something that is something your body produces naturally, does not irritate my skin in spite of its sensitivity. And as I said, it's manufactured by our own body, and you can go to drdrew.com/skin repair for more information and a 20% discount. That is drdrew.com/skin repair. And I want to remind you that it's time, warm weather's coming, so you might want to whip in some of that Paleo Valley chocolate or salted caramel, grass-fed and finished bone broth powder to your iced morning coffee or your hot coffee like I do every day. I just did about a half an hour ago, in fact. And both ways, you're getting at least 13 grams of collagen per scoop. It's high-quality protein. This is made from actual bones, not hides like other brands. Minimally processed, low in calories, sweetened with monk fruit. Again, it's great at appetite management. Paleo Valley's bone broth comes in plain, vanilla, and savory as well. And you will want to stock up for summer. It's really, we get desperate around here when we run out. Go to drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order or 20% off when you subscribe. That is our friends at Paleo Valley. We can't say enough about them. The meat sticks, the superfood bars. And by the way, the superfood bars, read the ingredients on there. It's one of the best ingredients, sourced ingredients and sort of combination of ingredients I've ever seen in a superfood bar. And they're made by Paleo Valley, so we know that they are carefully sourced and carefully produced. So there we go. Let us get to our next guest, who is our dear friend, Viva Fry. He has escaped Canada to the great state of Florida, and I believe he's available to join us right now. Is that true?
I am here.
I'm hoping. There you are. Good to see you.
Hello,
my friend.
Dr. Drew.
So, hello, Viva Fry. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm going a little crazy watching what's going on in Canada, and like I don't. The markets are not reflecting what should be the case, and I just don't understand how Canadians, seemingly according to the markets, are being duped into voting for Liberals again.
So the markets, meaning the markets predicting likely wins in the parliament, correct?
Yeah, there are markets that some people call it gambling, others would call it investing in probability. Yes. There's poly market, there's Kalshi, there's predicted, where people bet on political futures. They bet on future outcomes of various things, events. And the conservative Pierre Poilievre's party went into this with a 30-point lead in the markets, and now they are at 22% likelihood of being the next prime minister of Canada. And it's mind-boggling. I've just been going everywhere I can to put it on blast. You don't need to endorse the Conservatives to understand what the Liberals are, and that is corrupt CCP communist vassal to the core.
What happened? Why the switchover? I thought. What was your previous prime minister? I'm blanking his name. I'm so Trudeau. That Trudeau was, Trudeau took them to the bottom with all this, and they're ready to turn things around and be different.
I'll tell you what. I don't want to call anybody stupid, except I will. I mean, anybody who votes Liberal is truly either stupid, corrupt, has political amnesia. What happened? Justin Trudeau, the most corrupt, unethical SOB of a prime minister ever, after 9.5 years of devastating Canada in every single respect. There's things that you don't want to be up in certain things. Crime is up, gun violence is up, child hunger is up, medical assistance in dying is up. There's so many things that have been devastatingly imposed on Canadians in the last 9.5 years, to the point where his cabinet was falling apart. People were resigning, et cetera, et cetera. He then resigns, or announces his intention to resign. And then, he'll resign after they have their robust leadership race. And they plop in this globalist guy that nobody's ever heard of before in Canadian politics, Mark J. Carney. Globalist, been living in England for the last decade as governor of the Bank of England. And they plop him in. And he destroys it in the election. Like, Chrystia Freeland starts getting negative coverage or negative narrative control by Chinese influences, allegedly. And Mark Carney wins with 85% of the vote. A guy who's never served as MP, who nobody knows, and so everybody thinks is just a nice new old man face. He smiles, he talks very nicely and smoothly. He wins with 85% of the vote, and people think, oh, it's a new face, all is forgiven. And they don't understand that Mark Carney is a globalist puppet of the highest order. He might not even be a puppet. He might be the puppet master. He's got 3 passports. He's been living in England for the last 10 years. He's an anti-populist, anti-Brexit globalist, literally gives talks at Davos. I pulled up a bunch of interviews that he gives, like, literally talking about climate crisis at Davos. He's an invitee at Bilderberg meetings with Albert Bourla and the like. He is now anointed as the interim minister or prime minister designate, and people don't understand that this man is not a new face to politics. This man has been advising Justin Trudeau for the last 5 years. And the old boss is worse than, let me rephrase that. The new boss is worse than the old boss, but people just don't know who this guy is. And I'm trying to put it on blast. Whatever you think of Pierre Poilievre, and I've been criticizing Pierre for the last 4 years practically, people need to know what they're voting for. It's not a new face. You're voting for the same old globalist corruption of the highest order.
What's wrong with Pierre?
I said Pierre. I've said it from the beginning. He's a fair weather politician for good and for bad. He licks his finger and sees which way the political winds are blowing, and adopts his strategy accordingly. And I've said it. I got 4 years of track record of saying this. Everybody says, Viva, I ran for the People's Party of Canada. They're called more right than the Conservatives, but I call them a constitutionalist, quasi-libertarian party. So I've been criticizing him for 4 years because when the trucker protest was going down, he was very quiet, he and the Conservatives. He then, for a brief moment in time, when it looked popular, supported the truckers. And then when it became unpopular to support the truckers, again, licking his finger, going with the wind. And I say for good and for bad because fair weather politicians can be manipulated, guided, swayed by public opinion. So you can use that to your political advantage. The only problem is this election cycle, he seems to have licked his finger or listened to the whispers in his ear that Canadians want Trump derangement syndrome, and he's adopted that in response to the tariff dispute, the tariff war, as we call it. And I think he's effectively very much destroyed the campaign because Now people are saying, well, if there's not much of a difference between the conservatives and the liberals, I'll stick with the devil I know as opposed to going over to the devil I don't. And then you mix in your NDP
So
there, the new
tariffs.
Oh yeah, the tariffs.
So the tariffs tend to precipitate. That's really caused this shift. That makes some sense to me. Has the freeze in the tariffs caused a shift back?
Well, that's what we're going to see. But it's like it's not splitting hairs. It wasn't the tariffs per se. I think it was Pierre's response to the tariffs, which I said from day one. Okay. Pierre's response to the tariffs should have been, we don't need to address the Trump element of this. We just need to say these tariffs are being imposed on Canada because of every failure of the Liberal Party. You know, whether or not you thought Trump was being pretextual by saying it's fentanyl related or crime related or terrorists crossing the border, people on terror watch lists crossing the border, whether he thought it was pretextual, all Pierre had to say was, maybe this is pretextual, but we've got problems and they're all the fault of the Liberals. He didn't do that. He picked a fight unnecessarily with Trump. And then Trump, during one of those interviews said, I'd rather work with the Liberals. They're easier to work with. So it wasn't the tariffs per se, it was the response, which I think was a terrible response. I think it's played out that way. But now that Trump has said, we're going to lift the tariffs on countries that didn't retaliate, now I say Pierre has been given another layup. Pierre Poilievre can now say, well, it was Carney's stupid retaliatory tariffs that have now put us in the bad books with Trump. And so blame them yet again, and maybe he can make the most of this opportunity. I now sort of think that Trump was setting this up from the get-go. Pierre misplayed the initial part. Maybe he can save the extra point right now. But it's a sad state of affairs in Canada because you have your NDP, which are left of the Liberals, who are so disgusted with their own party. Jagmeet Singh, the man who held this government together for the last 2.5 years because he wanted to get to his federal pension. They say, okay, well, we're pissed with the NDP, but we're not going to go over to the Conservatives, so we're just going to go over to the Liberals. So Liberals still have a net gain as a result of their corrupt, unethical, unconstitutional, tyrannical abuses over the last 5 years. So it's very frustrating because Canadians don't seem to have learned the lessons. They seem to be more concerned with hating on Trump and blaming Trump for the lamentable state of Canadian politics when it's all very much on the Liberals' shoulders and to a lesser degree the Conservatives for not being the opposition that they needed to be.
It's so weird to me how close these politics are to what's happening in France. They just add in a Green Party and you've essentially got the mix that's going on there. Same back and forth too, from far left to sort of middle left because of just ridiculous political wins. One of the things I'm a little confused by, though, you said that child hunger is up. How is there a hungry child in Trudeau's socialist utopia? How's that possible?
Drew, 1 in 4 children live in a household with food insecurity in Canada. Inflation is up.
Socialist. It's a socialist country. How is there hunger in socialism? How does that happen? Well, I'm confused. Help me.
Beautiful thing about socialism. Nothing, everyone gets nothing. Let's say it's total fairness. It's stratification of society. The have-nots, it's all equal. And the haves, like Mark J. Carney, I can go on for a long time. He was the chair of Brookfield Assets Management. It's an asset management firm, an investment firm. He moved the company to New York, out of Canada, because of the tax policies and cost of doing business in Canada. He has offshore accounts for investment purposes. He's been advising Justin Trudeau on climate crisis policy for the last 5 years, while simultaneously gallivanting around the country in his private jet, while telling everyone you've got to cut down your emissions. We got to get to net zero by 2050.
That seems to be a requirement of private jet ownership and travel. Is you have to admonish everybody else for any use of fuels or fossil fuels while you fly a private jet, consuming more per human than anywhere else on Earth. So ridiculous. But so does this in any way increase the probability that some part of Canada will join the U.S.? We'll get Alberta or Calgary, something like that, coming down here?
It's interesting because there were other people who were saying, the 4D chess move when Trump pseudo-endorsed Carney. He didn't really do it, but when he spoke nicely of Carney, called him Prime Minister Carney, people were saying, yeah, he wants the Liberals to win because if the Liberals win, the push for Alberta to secede, to separate, and potentially join as a 51st state, it will never be higher ever. I don't know, the logistics of it separating from Canada, the federation is not a very easy thing to do. Quebec tried to do it twice. There was a whole Supreme Court decision as to whether or not the decision would even be recognized by the federal government for separation. But one thing is for certain, the push is getting strong now. And if the Liberals win, and you have Ontario and Quebec and the maritime provinces dictating the policy of the economic exploitation of Alberta, you're going to see a push to separate like you've never seen before. And the irony is that Albertans are more spiritually connected, zeitgeist-wise, to America than to heavily liberal Ontario. The Quebec always wanted to separate, so it's an interesting dynamic there. But you might have
a reason.
Say it again.
For a different reason. Alberta's the Canadian Texas. Quebec is literally the Canadian France. They want to be French, not Canadian.
It's an amazing thing because Quebec has been exploiting of the equalization payments. Like, they tax the resources out of Alberta and then pay them out to the so-called poor provinces. But Quebec's only a poor province because they don't include hydroelectricity in that calculation. Very fortunate for Quebec. And so they exploit Alberta, ship their money out to the Maritimes, impose crippling resource policies on them, and then expect them to thank them for the abuse. So I've never seen a movement like this at such a fever pitch now, but you might get your land connection from continental America to Alaska. And it would be ultimately, I don't know how it happens, or you're going to separate British Columbia from the rest of Canada. You're going to have, it's not going to be connected by landmass. But no, the long play might have been if Liberals get in, that push becomes stronger. But if the Liberals get in, there's going to be nothing left of Canada in 4 years in any event. So it'll be not the vultures, but rather the predatorial nations picking the debris of what Canada will be at that time, and Alberta will be probably lucky to be absorbed by the U.S. and probably very eager to join the U.S.
I'm looking into my crystal ball and I see Governor Fry of the great state of Alberta. What do you think?
It might be more likely.
Why not?
You don't need to be a natural born citizen in America to be a governor of a state. So who knows? Maybe governor of Florida in 10 years. We'll see what happens. I'm reading the comment. The longtime Canadian friend unfriended me because of the support for Trump. It's insane the degree of Trump derangement syndrome in Canada. But Drew, you'll as a man who understands the psyche of people, you'll be able to agree or disagree. This is the way that they cope with the damage that they've suffered by blaming a boogeyman because they feel that they do not have the power to take control themselves. And so can't blame their own decision making, can't blame their own government because they can't change that. So blame Trump and pretend that Trump's tariffs are why 1 in 4 children are going hungry in Canada.
Socialism and hungry children. I think the socialists down here would believe that's possible. But imagine that.
And mass amounts of government-assisted suicide or state-sanctioned murder. Like
Oh, I'm aware of that. The first time I went to Toronto, I remember going through a part of town that was like very slummy, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to have slums in a socialist country, but you guys do that. You manage that.
Drew, go to, I don't know if you've ever been to British Columbia, you go to East Hastings, and it's like, it's not of this earth. Gotten only worse. Encampments everywhere. I go back to Montreal now periodically. Every time I go back, it's like, you don't want to use the word like entering a developing nation because you wouldn't even expect a developing nation to look like this. Homelessness, rampant, open air drug facilities. There's one now that they've set up, I don't know if it's still there, 1.5 kilometers or like what they call a freedom mile from where I used to live. Safe injection sites where all they do is give you needles and give you crack pipes so you can do drugs open air, but they don't give you any therapy and they don't give you. It's just facilitating death, all the while wanting to expand medical assistance in dying to drug addicts and homeless. So it's an amazing thing. In a socialist society, you basically kill off the expendable, useless eaters, and that's what the socialist government of Canada is trying to do. And for whatever the reason, Canadians don't seem to have had enough.
We do it here too. We give needles, we give rigs, we give pipes, and we give the drugs. And no acknowledgement that this disease that they are fueling is a chronic progressive illness that ends in death, regardless of your source of drugs. It progresses and it kills. And now our death rates are higher than ever. Well done. Why could this be? How could this be? Look, it all started in Vancouver. They invented this sort of approach to treating addiction, and it spread all over the North America, and that's homelessness. There it is. Just drug addiction on the streets as opposed to in treatment like I used to do.
Drew, do you want to know a stat that'll blow your mind if you don't already know it? Do you know how many Canadians die of overdoses monthly, give or take?
Monthly on the whole Canadian. Well, here in LA County, they die at about 6 a day. So let's multiply that times 100. 600 a day?
That's actually exactly what. It's pretty good. 606 on average die monthly in Canada from opioids. 80% of that is fentanyl.
How did I know that? How did I know that? Because I've had 35 effing years of experience with this.
Average die monthly in Canada from opioids. 80% of that is fentanyl.
How did I know that? How did I know that? Because I've had 35 effing years of experience with this disease. I know helping them and they're free to do what they want to do, man. No, their brain isn't working right. They have anosognosia. You are actively, it is negligent manslaughter at best, at minimum. It should be judged accordingly.
In Canada, in Quebec, they wanted to now, speaking of negligent manslaughter, they want to case mandat en cas d'inaptitude, like living wills, to authorize for euthanasia, maids, even though it's criminally prohibited. It's just socialist societies, they become utopias of death. And that's what we're seeing in Canada. It just, when I say I've criticized the Conservatives, because I say to some extent, it's not that they're no better than the Liberals. They'll take you there, but they'll take you there slower. But at the very least, by taking you there slower, maybe you can get true opposition voices to bring them back to where they need to be. When you said earlier, this is sort of like France and sort of like the UK. The only difference is you don't really have a populist movement in Canada that has a candidate support like you have in France. We have People's Party of Canada and Maxime Bernier, and I like the party and I like the leader, but it doesn't have the same popular support that Marine Le Pen had in France. It doesn't have the same popular support that Călin Georgescu, now George Simeon, have in Romania. It doesn't have the same support that Bolsonaro had. And so what you have is 90 plus percent, let's say 95% of the population is either liberal, NDP, Green Party, which are the radical lefties, or centrist lefties, the conservatives. And there's still not that many conservatives in Canada to make up a freaking majority government. And so what's going to happen? I mean, I don't know. The Chinese infiltration in the Canadian government, the Chinese, I believe, poisoning Canadians, poisoning Americans. They're poisoning themselves to take over a country and its resources. They've sort of already bought into a lot of the natural resources. They've infiltrated the government. I believe they have good blackmail on the government. Drew, you got to have on a guy named Sam Cooper, actually, now that I think about it, a Canadian journalist documenting this. Canada is going to hell in a handbasket, and people seem to be getting mad at me for pointing it out instead of voting out the scoundrels who are sending Canada to hell.
You packed a lot into that. I was thinking, you mentioned 3, I'll say popular leaders more than populist, because populist sounds so pejorative. 3 popular leaders, and I would predict if you had one emerge in Canada, the same fate would befall the Canadian leader, which is they'd be in prison too. They'd be in lawfare. There was lawfare against all 3 people you mentioned. Marine Le Pen has to go to jail for 3 years. This is insane. The guy in Romania, jail. Bolsonaro, jail. And by the way, why is that different than what Putin does to his opponents? Isn't that the same thing Putin does to his opponents? He just makes them disappear. Why are these people different than Putin, whom they hate?
They do it with a nice accent. So they do it in Britain with a nice accent. No, it's no different. But I'm a little more cynical. I don't think you would have to worry about jailing a populist candidate in Canada. Although, by the way, they did. They arrested Maxime Bernier for holding an outdoor political rally in the 2021 election. They don't have to worry about jailing them because it doesn't seem that there's any meaningful, 30% support of the population for a populist candidate because they hate, I tell you, it's like, I don't want to say they hate freedom in Canada. They are in love with hating Trump more than they are in love with ensuring their own freedom. And it's Stockholm syndrome. It could be any number of things, but what it is, it's not resulting in change. It's facilitating a downward spiral, but at least they've got a boogeyman of Trump to hate while it happens.
It's delusion. There's delusion. Mass delusion is a very common phenomenon today, much to my amazement. I thought we ended those sorts of mass movements in the mid 20th century, but evidently we've not had enough. We've not had enough delusion. And, Trump derangement syndrome is a delusional syndrome.
They're protesting Elon Musk up in Canada. You make that make sense. Now, in fairness, there's not that many of them. They tend to be demographically, there tends to be some demographic uniformity in terms of who's actually protesting, and it's in Ottawa, the government cities. But no, it's delusional, and it's widespread. And I do blame it on the propaganda effects of a state-run media that controls narratives. Like you don't have Joe Rogan's, Steve Bannon's, Stephen Crowder's, Tim Pool's up in Canada. You've got Rebel News, True North, and they're great, but they don't have the Rogan-esque following even per capita. And so when you have the CBC, Radio Canada for the French side, CTV News, Global News, state-funded propaganda that literally and effectively brainwashes large swaths of the population.
Do you have Canadian viewers and listeners for Viva and Barnes?
Oh yeah, they're like 15%. And some of them are a little bit, some of them are pissed off with me because they keep saying Viva, like Pierre Poilievre is our only way out. And I'm saying, like, you can view my criticism like I'm trying to bring him down, or you can view my criticism like I'm trying to make sure he doesn't lose a slam dunk of an election because first of all, you don't get better as a candidate by just relying on support and ignoring the grievances, but you also don't win elections by letting your adversaries dictate your political policy, your political strategy. And what Pierre, I believe, sincerely has allowed himself to do is have his political strategy dictated by his fears of what Canadian state-funded media would say if he comes out and does what he needs to do to win this election.
If he starts picking up some steam, I predict lawfare. I predict he'll be in jail. So let's see what happens.
There wouldn't be enough time for that. They got 2 weeks, but no, they've already done everything to Pierre. They accuse him of being a misogynist, a Trump light, Trump puppet. Even though he's sat there, railing against Trump as well. But no, the reality is the Canadian population at large is brainwashed to the point where they still think the Ottawa trucker protests were a bunch of racist, misogynist extremists funded by foreign interests, and they think that foreign influence is trying to make Canada go to the right as opposed to go to the left. But it's the beauty of a state-funded media. I mean, they've got all the money. Carney, who's promised to nearly double the budget for state-funded media if he gets elected, how does he think that's going to impact the reporting on the CBC right, when they report on the Conservatives who want to defund them? And I mean, it's preposterous things like you had CBC sue the Conservatives back in 2019 for copyright infringement for using CBC footage
Canadian
in their
broadcast
political
company.
Yeah, Canadian Broadcast, a Crown Corporation that's funded by taxpayers.
So we were last together 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. How did that sort of fall out for you? You have any more thoughts from that day and the people you met and what you're learning about how things are going there? We have now tariffs that have been frozen and market likes it. We have Scott, why do I gaff on his name every time? Besant talking about how this all was a trap for China anyway, and that they stepped right into the trap. What are your thoughts on what's going on in our country?
I put out a tweet earlier and I said, like, it's almost as though Trump isn't stupid. It's almost as though Trump isn't a fascist. And it's almost as though Trump is America first. And everybody who's been saying that he's a stupid fascist are the ones who want to put America last. Like, I don't give him carte blanche and say, trust the plan. I just, first of all, I might have been right on the tariffs, but not necessarily for the right. I mean, I didn't think the tariffs were that bad of an idea. I did an interview with George Gammon, who was critical of the tariffs. Then I had, Robert Barnes last Sunday said wasn't critical of the tariffs. He took some flack for that. But at the end of the day, Trump is not anti-American and he's not stupid. So, you can still criticize where you think he makes some wrong. Be stupid to continue listening to the people who have been wrong for the last.
It's a great point, and it's a great time to suggest to everybody that they be rationally uncertain, that they not be irrationally certain. to be certain of everything is irrational. We can't predict the future. We don't know the truth. You got everything wrong thus far. Be humble. Try to ascend to some approximation of the truth as best you can, but stay sort of open to new ideas and new ways of looking at things, because the truth is very difficult to get to. Yeah, who would have expected 3,000 point up day in the market?
Me?
You did?
Oh,
3,000 points?
yes. Yeah.
You expected a 3,000 point uptick in the market?
I expected a dead cat bounce.
This wasn't a dead cat
Isn't that what you
bounce.
call it?
No, that's not what this is.
Well,
This
I
is- this is a-
expected.
no, not at all.
I could see that people were freaking out and selling stuff that aren't stock market aficionados like we are. But I expected a dead cat bounce.
This wasn't a dead cat
Isn't that
bounce.
what you call it?
No, that's not what this is.
Well, I
This is a-
expected.
no, not at all.
I could see that people were freaking out and selling stuff that aren't stock market. I knew it would bounce. Well,
All right. Well, speaking of freeze, the whole system keeps freeze. So
listen, I have seen this happen several times before, and I told everybody who was freaking out, I said, "Don't sell anything.
yeah,
Just do not
for sure,
sell.
Of course.
Buy." Now,
You know
is
who
the
looks like
time. And Trump.
the smartest woman in the room now is Marjorie Taylor Greene. They made fun of her. And had you just not sold, you would have been better bought in. You know, but the everybody, they want to use it against Trump, and that is the most insidious type of person on earth.
Yes, and people need to be exposed for that. We need to all be rooting for America, and that's that. All right, Viva, good to see you as always. We'll look for you on X, the Viva Fry, F-R-E-I, and Viva and Barnes, and Viva Fry podcast. Check it all out on Rumble and Locals. Anywhere else they should go?
That's it. If you Google my name, you'll get a bunch of good stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
Google's name,
One of those names.
V-I-V-A-F-R-E-I. All right, my friend, talk to you soon.
You know what else I want
Thank
to
you.
say?
What do
It's
you
going to
wanna
be
say?
volatile. It's not going to just keep going up. It's going to go down and up and down and
Correct.
up, because the people that bought low are going to sell off some of their gains. And
this
it's gonna go
ride is
back
not
up.
over yet. This
Yeah.
is a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of changes. The long-term T-bills rates are going up.
Somebody
It's just
said
a lot
if
of crazy things happening.
You haven't lost money. You own a stock in a good company,
Yes.
and it's not that
Correct.
you lost your money. You just have to wait till it comes back, and it'll come
The
back.
company you own might be worth a little less for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so we appreciate y'all being here. Let's put up Salty Cracker coming in tomorrow at 2:00. Let's see the rest. We have, I think, Mark Robert coming in. He's going to give us an update on all things Kennedy and otherwise. Chef Grulian. And Jack Posobiec, Don Browski, I think I get that right. A lot of great guests coming. Check it out. We're remaining at 2:00 Pacific time. And let's see, Susan, are you going to do a show next week also, you think?
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about Charles Manson,
Okay, good.
because he cock-blocked my show twice today. He knocked out the internet, and then he froze my show twice. Every time we talked about him, the show would go off the air. It was the weirdest thing, right, Caleb?
Yeah, it was literally each time it was within 10 seconds of them saying something mean about Charles Manson, the internet would go out. And then I hooked up satellite, and it did the same exact thing a second time. So thanks, Charlie.
Right as we started talking
Maybe I
about
should
him.
say something mean right now since we're heading towards the end here.
Don't describe him. Whatever you do, he doesn't like it.
He was schizophrenic, psychotic.
Scruffy.
He was not. All right.
He was a
Let me just.
psychopath.
Yes, he was indeed. Let's just look at what's going on here.
That was so weird.
Let's
Kind of
see.
ruined my show, though. I hope if anybody was watching it, you can get it in 3 parts. I don't know. Maybe Caleb can put it all together in one show and upload it somewhere, so at least everybody can see the whole thing. But I don't know. There's a
The
half hour.
restream froze too a little bit. It's kind of weird.
We have 40 minutes missing
All
out
right.
of it, so it sucks.
We're going to wrap this thing up. We appreciate y'all being here. Do support the people that support us. We're very fortunate to have each and every one of them, and we're fortunate to have each and every one of you here. Tell a friend, be a part of this. We will see you with. It's not salty. Is it Salty Cracker tomorrow? Yeah.
I think so.
Somebody
Support
said.
our sponsors who support the show at drdrew.com/ sponsors.
Somebody said already, so it's
Free.
tomorrow. We'll get the salty cracker in here. The salt must flow tomorrow too.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.